Publishing by the Numbers podcast. It is the first week of February. Hopefully it is warmer than it is during the last weeks of January. Okay, I'm probably the only one suffering from this, but it is freaking cold in Utah. You are on episode 17, and today we're going to talk about romance. It is February. It is the month of romance. It is Valentine's and all of the squishy things. My 9-year-old daughter is so very, very happy because she is into it. All of the fluffy and the pink and the hearts and the, it's amazing. I am Janet S. Brown, and I am joined today by my two amazing co-hosts, Virginia Anderson. Hello, Virginia.
Hello, hello, hello.
Who loves romance more than anything else that we could ever talk about, except that she said she might fall asleep. And my other co-host, CJ Anaya. Hi, CJ.
Hi, guys. Hello.
All right. And today we're going to talk about what is and is not romance by book standards, because there is actually a difference. Not all books that have a relationship story are romances. So there's some general categories we'll talk about, and then we'll talk about using romantic elements in books. And those are all different than what is actually a romance. And this is, again, by book standards. So CJ, I'm going to throw the question to you, because if I throw it to Virginia, then it's just going to lead nowhere good. What is, by technical definition, a romance?
All right. A romance is focused solely on the relationship between the main character and the love interest. So technically, they're both main characters, depending on how much emphasis you put on point of view. We'll get into that later. But it's all about them falling in love, the ups and downs of that. That is the story. The story is the love story. That is it. That's what you focus on. And the expectation is that at the end of the book, there is a happily ever after. It is satisfying. It is sweet. Sometimes it can be happily for now if it's a series and you're talking about these characters all the way through the series. But whatever it is, it needs to inspire hope and make you feel good. And there is no tragedy at the end of it. We are avoiding tragedy. We are only focused on happily ever after. So you're looking at Hallmark, you're looking at romantic comedies, and the romance, happily ever after. That is what a romance story is. And I see so much eye rolling and grimacing over in V's corner. She's like, kill me now.
Yes, and very important, romances still have plots. Romances can have mysteries in them. They can have all these kinds of things. But one of the defining factors there is the happily ever after. And also, if you take the romance out, you don't have a story anymore. You can't string together that plot without the romance. Okay, if you can take it out and the plot still flows and the story still exists, now it's something else with romantic elements, which we'll get more into, but just while we're here, define it. All right, V, to make you feel better, what is a love story then?
The only type of love story that I know of is someone dies at the end. It has to have a death. So it is the same, it starts the same way as a romance. So it's the relationship, a love relationship between two main protagonists. But the expectations is that it needs to end badly. So for me, the reason why I mentioned that is because you really need to understand what are the expectations of your readers. So for me, if you give me a love story and it is a happily
ever after.
She won't say it. She refuses.
I can't say it. It doesn't flow. If it's that, then I will be really annoyed. I would be really, really annoyed because it is not real. It is not real life. Real life is meant to be ending sadly. And this is how, Anna Karenina, Jane Austen books, Emily Bronte, those are the kind of books that define how I see relationship. And that's why I'm totally effed up when it comes to relationship. But this is another topic that I'll keep for my shrink analysis. But this is love story. Love story is a a love relationship between two protagonists that ends with tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And I
there's
love it.
usually some reason that the romance does not complete. So from a media point of view, Casablanca is one of the ultimate examples of this, that it's the we'll always have Paris and you got to get on the plane because this is what's right for you, even though we should be together. And that moment of, yep, he's going to watch her fly away. That's a love story. Nicholas Sparks, almost all of his stuff falls into love stories, not romances, because tragic things happen and all bets are off with a love story, that anyone is going to survive, that they're going to be with the same partner by the end. None of that is a given. Okay.
But
And you did hit a thing, that romances are a fantasy. We
Yeah.
want to fulfill certain things, and it's very fantastical because it's an escape from real life where too many of these depressing things do happen. Go ahead, V.
I think there's a impossibility. There's always an impossibility in a love story. So something that should happen, that you hope would happen, doesn't happen. These
Right.
people going through their entire life, just getting there, but not quite getting there. And that's the appeal for me in a love story is, and I think it's the realism in it is that, real life doesn't necessarily end with, the fireworks and so I'm tortured basically. So but I'm a masochist. That's known fact. So yeah.
Well, but if you want to talk about how it relates to life, so frequently in life, many things don't work out due to misunderstandings, due to missed timing,
Yep.
due to tragedies, all sorts of things. I can think of one or two people in my life where something didn't work out because of timing issues or hit and miss. And you always look back on that and you wonder a little bit, right? You kind of wonder what could have been. And I think that is the appeal for a lot of people. And many people who love stories find it realistic, but they also find it so heart-wrenching. That's how they connect to it. And they love that. They love feeling so torn and tortured, I guess you could say. And so for those who love that and that appeals to them, love stories are right up their alley. They're going to love those types of books. For me, I cry on a dime. I can't have that in my life. Everything needs to work out. Dang it. So yeah, different reader expectations, but still, I love a good Nicholas Sparks movie or book if I can just tell myself this is going to end badly and then just accept it. But that's rare for me. That's rare for me.
Yes, you notice that there is a Hallmark channel. There is not a Nicholas Sparks channel.
Correct.
Because of the appeal of the romance thing. Now, an interesting thing here, and I know it's a little bit off topic, but it all connects, is something that as we've talked to various people, there is a certain aspect of this that is, I don't want to call it just an American thing, but kind of Western world thing versus not. Because we look at Virginie, who, you grew up in Paris. And CJ and I are very much Western American girls. I am a product of cowboy stories and True Love Conquers All and all of that kind of thing. And I eat it up. And that is romance. Romance is about that love conquers all, and these things come through. And it's a very kind of American outlook on things, that we want the white hats are going to win and romance is going to work and people are going to stay together and it's going to be adorable and all of those things. So some of this is also isn't always, but it also can be an aspect of the cultural relationship and how it looks at these stories, whether it's the love story that's got that tragedy in it, or it's the love story that has a lot of comedy to it, or it's that love story that's all about that happily ever after fulfillment.
I think so there's this TV show going on Netflix that's, all the, pop culture news articles I'm reading, they're talking about this TV show, how people have a love and a relationship with this TV show. And it's Emily in Paris. For someone who grew up in Paris, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. The main character, Emily, just annoying. But having lived overseas and be, in contact with a lot of different culture, I can see the appeal. I can see why the Americans are maybe more into this, not just Americans, but I can see why, I can see the difference. Like, you know, we invented existentialism. We grew up with the fact that tragedy is part of life. So this whole really unrealistic, and I think it's just the predictability. It's like you always expect something that's happy at the end, and it's annoying. It's annoying.
Well, and I think most people
No.
in France would agree with you, because and I have found that to be a cultural aspect within French society, is that it's far more cynical in nature when it comes to love. So that goes back to what Janice said, that a lot of this tastes, and it can all be influenced by culture and by literature that you've read growing up, and by, you know, the geographical area in which you live. So, and that's a fascinating study, because I think that in the future can actually help you know where to market your books to within the world in general. You know, what marketplaces are going to be more receptive to your kind of romance, or to a love story, or to, you know, chick lit or women's fiction, or other types of romances. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point, because when you are going to do your market research, that's part of the market research. Which marketplace am I going to promote, heavily promote my book? And I mean, I'm not saying that all French people are not interested. That's not true, because what's her name? Barbara Cartland. So the pink lady.
Yes.
I think she's really popular in France, and it's this. Oh my God, these books. Oh my God, just not even.
We can't stomach it, but that, yeah.
But
Yeah, but there's plenty of Americans who read Nicholas Sparks and who love
yeah,
Casablanca
true.
too. So that there's just some leanings that we can kind
Yeah.
of see as we talk to people,
But it's
as far as what
important
the influence.
to know the difference, right? Because precisely because if I'm expecting a love story, and you serve me romance and think that I will be pleased, I can tell you I won't be pleased.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it works the other way, because if you go into romance and you say this is a romantic comedy and you place it there and somebody dies at the end, not every reviewer, but the vast majority of your viewers are going to be unhappy with you, because you're not serving up what it is that that market is looking for. So this is why these things we're defining are so important, is because we have to be able to know where to put our stories so that we match the market, so that they're going to want to buy more of your stories, because otherwise they lose trust in you as a writer, and they're going to say, yeah, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, no, I'm not going to throw the money at you. So let's finish really quick going through our different kinds. I will take on women's fiction. Women's fiction is an interesting category because these are stories around a woman's emotional journey. And a relationship might be a part of that, and very often is a romantic relationship, but that is not the focus of these stories. This can be things like Eat, Pray, Love. Still Magnolias is one of my favorite shows that is all women's fiction, because it's about, in that case, it's about several women having women's journeys with women's concerns. And they all have, well, not all, most of them do have romances going on, but that is not the important part. Even Shelby, who the whole thing starts with it being about her wedding, that's not the story. Because the story is about so much more than the man she married. And it's about the relationships they have with each other. And sometimes the friendships and the other relationships in women's fiction are even more important than the romantic partner. But a lot of people who read, we put these together because a lot of people who read one or the other will read others. And again, it's also important to know where your category goes. So if you're talking about a woman's emotional journey, about a life journey, and there happens to be some romance in there, it's not a romance, it's women's fiction. Okay. All right. And now I'm going to drop the last one in your lap, CJ. What is chick lit? And it is not gum.
Yeah, no, it is not gum. Okay, they're kind of, it's like it's a mix of romance, fun romance, sassy romance, but it's also very women centric in the sense that it's a woman's journey. And so I would say that it's a mix of things, but it's going to be very comedic. It's not nearly as serious as women's fiction is. In that emotional journey respect, so a lot of people get chick lit and romantic comedy mixed up, and I did that too initially, because I thought, well, chick lit is supposed to be kind of funny, and yes, it is. It's lighthearted, but it also does carry some heavier themes. And there is heavier play within romance. The relationship can or cannot be the most important thing. Like it varies, I would say, but it's a heavy mix of that romance and women's fiction. And then you'll kind of see a mix of that in there. So sometimes it's hard for me to define chick lit because of the way that romance and women's fiction cross over. But the whole point is you're not going to get the same deeply rooted emotional journey that you would in women's fiction, because women's fiction focuses on that so wholly. And within chick lit, you're getting more of the romance in there and more of the lightheartedness, but it's still deep enough that you still follow that journey. So, and I just lost my thought process there. As far as like what example I could give. I had it in my head and I lost it. I even had an author name. Can you give me an example, Jana?
Bridget Jones.
That's
Diary
it.
of Bridget
Yeah.
Jones. That's a really good chick lit kind of thing where it's got that lightheartedness. There are relationships going on in her life, but it's about her whole journey, including the relationships. They're important, right. But it is, much more lighthearted. There are granny panty scenes in there because it's funny. It's leaning into that comedic, that lighthearted kind of thing. But it's still about her emotional journey as she's going through this time in her life. Yeah. So it's got that lightness to it. So those are kind of the four big ones. And then inside of each of these, romance more than any of them, there are then sub niches. So it will break down and we'll say within romance, we have romantic comedy. We have older in life romances. We have small town romances. We do all of those kinds of things. So these break down a lot further than this, but these are those big umbrellas that kind of tell us where we're going. If you go and look on someplace like Amazon, in general, all of this is going to fall under their romance category, but these other things are distinctly different when it comes to marketing. And this right here is the big question, and the question and answer all at once is, why do we care? Why do we care that these things are so different? And it comes down to the marketing, because again, we want to match the right market with the right kind of book. Otherwise, we get poor reviews and poor sales. So we don't want to pitch as Still Magnolias at people that are looking for lighthearted romance. We don't want to pitch a romance at Virginie who wants something that's tragic. And so we have to make sure that those things match, that they come together so that we're able to find our target audience. Because like we say, when we talk on this podcast, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, we're trying to hit both the side that is, it's fun to write, follow your passion, but also we want to make money doing this because money pays for cookies, or at least the ingredients for cookies, which is, what I've been munching on all day. So as part of that, when we get these things right, we're able to better make a living off of the writing that we do. And now everybody's looking at me. All right. So
I was like, yeah, preach, girl. Yeah. That's it.
How inspired I am by this topic.
Nothing to add.
Oh, goodness. So yes, so because it is February, we're going to be talking about romance all month. Virginie may or may not survive it. But we wanted to really start with this idea as to where we're starting from. So as we talk about the other things, we'll mostly be focusing it on our primary category of romance. Again, from a business point of view, romance is the top selling genre, period, and has been forever. And so, people will often say, well, romance is dumb, romance is formulaic, which is what we'll talk about in the next podcast, all these other things. But at the end of the day, there's $2 billion in romance. And that is a really large pie that you might want to slice up. Romance readers tend to read a lot. They tend to be binge readers. They love to grab onto a series and read all the way through it. So this is one of the reasons why, if you're considering romance, we think you ought to make that leap, because it's just a really, really great genre to start out in. And so if you were going to go into romance, I have other questions. I'm going to throw it at CJ. I am. Sorry, Virginie. If you were going to start writing romance, what are maybe the top 1 or 2 things you would do to prepare yourself for writing into this genre?
Well, the first thing I would want to do is take a look at the sub niches within romance, because while some can cross over as far as the types of things that readers expect, some absolutely cannot. And so I would want to pay attention to the different types of sub niches within romance and really ask myself, what do I read? Because I'm assuming if you want to start off in romance, that probably you do read these things. If you're coming into it purely from a business standpoint and you're looking at that $2 billion slice of, what could you do with it? So it's more of a business decision and not necessarily something you read, then I encourage you to begin reading. Whether or not you enjoy it, you should be reading it. That way you can really understand the different sub niches and what is happening within different sub niches. So contemporary romance, romantic comedies, those can cross over a little bit. Okay. You'll notice very similar themes, but dark mafia romances or paranormal romances, romantic fantasy, and trying to write those and compare them to a contemporary romance, it's going to be very different. You're going to have very different expectations within those sub niches, and you've got to pay attention to that, because you'll have different types of characters, different types of tropes that are popping up, different types of themes that are popping up, and you'll also have different types of elements, and even sometimes different types of expectations when it comes to beats. So there are a few elements that you'll need to pay attention to. So I would say start reading in some of the sub niches that pique your interest most, and start identifying the things that keep cropping up within that specific sub niche, because those are things that inform your market research. Those are things that your readers like. Another thing I would tell you to look at, if you're kind of doing this market research and you're really interested in deciding which sub niches do I want to go into, pay attention to what the readers are saying in their reviews, because that's your target audience for that sub niche. Pay attention to what is working for them, because they will spell it out for you. They will give you so much gold when it comes to why they like the characters, why they like the romance, why they liked the plot. They will also tell you why they didn't like something. And that's really important to pay attention to as well. Something that I see crop up repeatedly in romance is the annoying heroine. So I will see reviewers say the main female character was so freaking annoying. She was a whiner. She didn't make any sense. It was like she had split personality disorder. Now that is I think that could have apply across all genres. If you've got a really annoying main character, that's a problem. If you don't know who your character is and they have like split personality disorder, that's inconsistency, and that's a problem. But those are things that you will discover from your readership, and knowing what they like and what they don't like is very key to understanding the way a particular sub niche works and the way your audience expects it to work. And so all of that very easy market research is stuff that you can analyze and write down. And then you can look at that and go, okay, I can see what people are expecting within this sub niche. I can see what people expect within this sub niche. I've read a couple books in each of those. What do I like? What do I feel like I can stomach if I'm not necessarily a romance reader, but I do need to understand the sub niche within, that I'm producing in? Or if I am a romance reader, what do I like so much that I want to keep producing in? And once you narrow in on that sub niche, you study it. You really study it and you really come to understand it. And a lot of people think that there might be some magic formula to understanding it, but honestly, just read them. just read them. It's really the first step is just reading them, because you will begin to pick up the flow. You'll understand the way that the pacing works. And then as you start to look at craft books and how that pacing is set up, and what, labels and terms and tropes and things, and we'll talk about that a little later in different podcasts, but you'll start to notice all of those things that the readers really enjoy and like, and pretty soon you'll become a pro in what they expect, which lends itself to better books that you can create for them, and then better marketing in the long run. So do I get another gold star? I'm very obsessed with gold stars.
Yes, you definitely get all the gold stars.
Thank you.
Okay, Virginie, what is your favorite love story? What would you recommend to people who want to bring on the pain?
Some French literature, but I think it's maybe too niche. So I won't. So some of my favorite French authors like Stendhal, Balzac. So I actually while I'm listening about this chick lit.
Yeah, chick lit. It does
No.
sound like
No, it's no. I'm talking about the women fiction thing.
Yes.
Actually, there's quite of overlap between the woman fiction and the love story that I read. So there's always some level of for me, that's what makes the book interesting. It's not just the love story, it's what's going on with the women in the society that they are in. So that's why books by Jane Austen and Emily Bronte are particularly interesting, because we are reading those books through the lens of modern women. It is just really interesting to me to see the parallel and how far we came from the time when women were just their husband's property, basically. They didn't have any rights, and how they navigate and how they get really clever and achieve things that that no man would ever think that women would do. Like Jane Austen wrote, Emily Bronte, Charlotte Bronte, they wrote their books, a lot of their books under pen names. This is, if they use their real name, they will probably be taken like, what is that? Like, women don't write, but yet with their pen name, male, of course, they produce some of the best English literature books that we know. So I think Russian authors, English authors, Jane Austen. Oh, and there's one American author that I really like, and it's a love story. It's Edith Wharton.
Those are good.
So that's my really short answer to your question, Jenna. Here you go.
Oh, very lovely. All right, so the last thing that I'm going to bring up before we move into our moments of irrelevancy is what we talked on briefly about romantic elements within other genres. So it's really important to acknowledge that relationships, friendships, romances, things like that are an important part of just being people. We most of us, not everybody, but most of us don't exist in isolation. And so we have relationships with people, we have family relationships, we have friendships, we have romances, and those are going to show up in all kinds of books, regardless of your bigger genre. And so when people are trying to decide, is this a romance book that has some fantasy in it, or is it a fantasy book that has some romance in it? Because again, you market those differently. You always have to look at that ability to take the romance out. So like I have an urban fantasy where if you took the romance out, the urban fantasy stands by itself. It's a very light subplot in that urban fantasy because I want to show that these emotional connections are important, right? But you could take that romance out and it would still tell a really fun, high adventure urban fantasy. So that is an urban fantasy with romantic elements. It's not a romance. It's not a paranormal romance. It's not a romance that happens to also be an urban fantasy. We don't always have good terms for things that trip off the tongue that way. But like a paranormal romance, that is a genre that is about the romance. And if you could take the romance out, it's no longer a paranormal romance. So those are things always to think about as you're saying, okay, where am I going to categorize this? What market am I going to go after? Because I know a lot of people who will say, well, I've written this amazing mystery and it has a romance in it. I can put it in the romance categories. And if you can take the romance out and the mystery stands by itself, don't put it in the romance categories because the romance readers will eat you alive. Okay, we love our romance readers, big old hearty faces. I can't do the heart thing. I've never been able to do this thing. Anyway, big old hearty faces for our romance readers, but they are very particular. And if you give them, here's a mystery that just has a light romance in it, that's not a romance book. You're going after that wrong market. So that is something that, yes, it's important. Put relationships in your books. That helps to connect to your reader in most genres. There are some genres where you really don't need much, but it is helpful in most genres, but understand that that's the difference. Don't market after people who are not going to like your books. It doesn't do you any good. So that said, let us become completely and utterly irrelevant. Virginie, what is something completely and utterly irrelevant in your life tonight?
Okay, so you know how I like stuff that are weird, strange, so that I can make that face that's just what the huh? So I've heard about this before, but I've never actually watched this. So, and because I'm in Japan and they do things, they do all sorts of things that I cannot understand. So I met this Japanese girl, and we were having conversation, and then she was telling me about mukbang. Like,
Okay.
that sounds dirty. I'm like, what is mukbang? Basically, mukbang apparently it's coming from South Korea and Japan. It's a live streamed video where viewers watch the host eat.
Oh.
Viewers,
people are weird.
Yep. So it's huge. It's really, really huge. And there's a reason why I mentioned this, because there's a wisdom in this. It's so basically the concept is this. It's usually it's usually female, but there's also some guys who do that. They're very small, tiny, super thin, pretty, and they eat a amount of food that you cannot even apprehend. We're talking about 20,000 calorie meal.
Oh my word.
So
you're essentially eating what is the equivalent of an eating contest for one.
Yeah.
It's like Nathan's hot dogs, except it's some tiny little girl eating whatever.
Yeah, so it's huge, but I also know there are some mukbangers in the US, and in Europe. So it's actually a profession. So there's different themes. So there's ones that it's for like storytellers. So they eat, but at the same time they're telling you a story. There's like DJing, like they playing music and while interacting.
So they are eating, and we're all just amazed at how much food they're shoveling in their mouths. And then they might tell a story or play some music while they're at it.
Yeah, or they might do interviews, collaborations with other mukbangers. So there are some very problematic thing with this, because because obviously it's not really healthy, and
and
I mean it's not super common, but some people died of that. Some mukbangers died because come on, how can you do that 20,000 calories in a meal and really frequently, like every day, and without being sick? So there's a lot of problems around it, but I thought that was really just so beyond my comprehension. And that's being in Japan, and I think a lot of I think every day I see something that I'm just like, what is that? What is that? And the reason why I want to mention this is because so don't always believe what you see. So most of the my understanding is a lot of the mukbangers, they do this live, so there's no video editing, nothing like that. But a lot of people also do it doing video editing, so they're going to puke, they're going to
take breaks,
or they're going to actually spit it out after they put the food in their mouth, and they're just going to edit it out, these things out, and then they are they're creating a impression that you can eat as much as you want, but without being sick. And then it's very problematic from a eating, creating eating disorders and waste as well. And these people are not doing this for free, for the fun of it. There's the massive food sponsorship behind these people. Some of the really successful ones, they're earning $50,000 an episode, $80,000 an episode. So because they have like millions of followers, so whatever products they're sponsoring, it's going to be bringing a lot of buyers to that brand. So that's why. So I just want to tell our people who are watching this is, be careful what you choose to believe online. Even in this field, in our field, you're going to see a lot of people telling you, oh, you can publish your book in
10 days,
10 days, and you can go make 5 figures a month income. It's not that simple. It is true that if it's too good to be true, then often it is too good to be true. Good things take time, and you need thoughts put into it. And especially right now, because this whole artificial intelligence is just like going crazy. Everyone's talking about chat GPT and all that. Don't use shortcuts. We're going to do a whole episode about the artificial intelligence, how we can use it for good, not for evil. But think about what you're putting out there. Your reputation is key, is everything. We only have one name. So once you trash that name, that's it. So we here, we are, we're dealing with a lot of clients every day, and you'll be amazed by the kind of things that they believe. So we really want to make sure that you put on your critical thinking hat, and if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. Oh my God, my irrelevant moment became a
pep talk on not taking shortcuts.
So I apologize, but that's it. I'm done. So
All right, CJ, what's irrelevant in your world?
Oh, well, every once in a while, I will have a moment where I decide to binge watch something because I need to veg out, and I love documentaries, love them. So I was watching Madoff, the Monster of Wall Street on Netflix. It's fascinating. And I did not know much about the Ponzi scheme that he created over I think it was 4 decades, that it kept going for 4 decades. But I'm telling you, it is fascinating stuff. And also the fallout of that was so incredibly tragic. It's right up there with all of V's love story tragedies. You can't, sometimes life is just more stranger and far more horrific than fiction. because the fallout of that was just so terrible. But it is interesting to watch it, and it's interesting to see all of the areas in which so many people could have prevented the Ponzi scheme from continuing, and they did not do it. Mostly people in government did not do their due diligence and really stop that from happening. And then to see the victims victimized again was also heartbreaking. It's really good to watch. I think it's very informative. So more, I'm not really throwing anything lighthearted out there, but more of just a documentary recommendation, because I thought it was so it was just so fascinating. It really informed me on a lot of things that I had not even known about that entire ordeal. So good stuff. Go watch it.
We don't talk about ahead of time what's our irrelevant moment. And I thought that there's a theme right now. We're talking about scammers here. So all just be careful.
We talked about scammers. I'm talking about scammers. I know Jan is going to come in with gardening though, and she's going to make it so much better and so lighthearted.
Is she though? Is she though?
Actually, I'm going to talk about AI.
Oh,
because I read The World's Best Funny from a friend on Facebook talking about AI. And so the setup is that there's the DARPA, which is a defense robot that is based on AI. And so the story is that it was taken to a military base where there were Marines that spent most of a week helping the engineers to refine their algorithms. So the Marines had to walk around, and it taught the robot how to identify people, how to identify running people, how to identify people with guns, how to identify people in uniforms, all these things that it can learn from the Marines. And then their boss says, okay, now we're going to flip it, and we're going to put the AI robot in the middle of a traffic area so that there's nothing around it to distract it. And the Marines have to come in from very far away, and there's a prize if you can get from very far away and go touch the robot without it detecting you. So this just shows you why I'm really not worried about AI taking over the universe. So I'm just going to read this last thing right from the book because it's really funny. 8 Marines, not a single one got detected, Phil said. They defeated the AI system not with traditional camouflage, but with clever tricks that were outside of the AI system's testing regime. 2 somersaulted for 300 meters, never got detected. 2 hid under a cardboard box. You could hear them giggling the whole time, like Bugs Bunny in a Looney Tunes cartoon sneaking up on Elmer Fudd in a cardboard box. One guy, my favorite, Phil said, he field stripped a fir tree and walked like a fir tree. You could see his smile, and that's about all you see. The AI system had been trained to detect humans walking, not humans somersaulting, hiding in a cardboard box, or disguised as trees. So these simple tricks, which a human would have easily seen through, were significant enough to break an advanced algorithm.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? So it says something lovely about the creativity of humans. We look at these AIs, and we'll talk more about AI, but we say, oh, they can do all these amazing things, and they're always getting bigger, and they're always getting smarter. But their smartness and everything else is based off of what we train them to do. And when you go outside of whatever that training is, and most human experience really is outside of what you can train a machine to do or to think or to feel, then it's humans' ingenuity and humor and everything else that win over every time. Because I'm picturing these Marines as being, on a base like that, they're probably between the ages of 18 and 24. So they're like my boys, and my boys would totally do this to a robot. They would totally walk up in a cardboard box, and they'd write something on the side like exterminator, and they do this. So isn't it amazing just how creative people are, and that no matter how good the AI is, we come up with things that still fool the AI, that still fool the computers, and we are creative and amazing beings. With that said, thank you all for joining us. You can find the show notes and the show at www.elantumdigital.com, and follow the podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast distributor. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review. You can even comment on your favorite part of the show down below. We'll see y'all later. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.